I'll deeply pass on to our next speaker, Nicola, who's the chair of the Glasgow Stop the War Coalition.
Thank you, Caris. And as a long-time Bands campaigner, I do apologise you've been so cold all day, but it's been 13 years since we've had a shilling in the metres, so you can appreciate it. Next time, wear layers, bring a hot water bottle. When I was asked to speak today, and I said yes, that's fine, I'll do that. I didn't realise I was speaking in a session that was called Their Crises, Our Solutions, because when you're speaking on the issue of the perpetual state of war that the world appears to be in, it's hard to have solutions. And then I remembered I was speaking to people who think there is only one solution, so I thought that's fine. That's the opposite. I just want to start, I'm going to concentrate, as I'm sure you can predict, on the current situation with the bombing of Iraq and Syria. And I want to start with some givens so I can move on to the other complexities of it. And I think it's a given that our current involvement with America and France in bombing Iraq and Syria is not about the people, it's not about saving the people. If it was about saving the people, if that's what they were concerned about, they'd have done something about Israel's attack on Gaza and Palestine. If it was about saving people, they'd have done something faster about the crisis in West Africa of the Ebola virus. This is not about the people, it's as it always was, it's about the oil. And what we know is that while they're doing that, trying to secure their oil, there are going to be people who are so-called collateral damage, the innocent people of Syria and Iran who are going to die. Because the myth of precision bombing has been shown to be a myth year in, year out since 2001. Some other givens, everybody's horrified about the hostages. Nobody is sitting back thinking that's okay. But where we differ from the warmongers is how we would deal with that, what we think should happen as a result. IS, whatever they want to call themselves, are absolutely a horrific organisation. Absolutely what they're doing is dreadful. They have the Shia community in their sights, they regard the Shia as heretics. But what the answer is not is for us in the West who created IS, who created the breeding ground for them, who stoked the fuel for them. The answer is not for us to go and bomb innocent Iraqi people and innocent Syrians. This conflict has its roots way back in 1915-16 with the Sykes-Picot Agreement, when Britain and France carved up the Middle East as the Ottoman Empire disintegrated. And what we can see now is quite possibly the final unravelling of the Sykes-Picot Agreement. But what we have to be careful of is looking at all British actions between then and now as disconnected escapades. Because actually it's been almost continuous British foreign policy to interfere in the Middle East ever since 1915. So when we see what's happening now, it's not something new, it's something that's been going on for a long time. When they took possession of Palestine and then handed it over to the Zionists. When they interfered in Iran, the various coups that we've seen there right back to the 1920s. When they interfered in Iraq, when they interfered in the Iraq-Iran war. When they failed to intervene when the Kurds were being targeted. All of this is deliberate British foreign policy, and it's all connected, and it's been going on now for nearly 100 years. And we have to be really clear as an anti-war movement. This isn't just an isolated response to some bad men in the Middle East. This is part of continuous British interference, warmongering, exploitation and theft in the Middle East. And as a movement, we have to stand up against that. Tribal areas and stuck them together and called them a country, and now they wonder why it falls apart. They gave one group precedence over another and they wonder why it falls apart. We go into Iraq in 2003 and we stoke up sectarian tensions and we wonder why it doesn't work out well. We are actually responsible for the destruction of Iraq, first of all after the First Gulf War with the sanctions, which killed an estimated 500,000 Iraqi children, a price that Madeleine Albright said at the time was a price worth paying. At the time of the Oil for Food campaign, the Iraqis were given $100 per Iraqi person for a whole year. That was to cover the food they needed, the medical care they needed, the education they needed. We started to destroy that country in the 1990s and we continued in 2003. In 2003, when we weren't welcomed as the great liberators, surprise, surprise, who could have predicted? What we did then was we stoked up the sectarianism. We turned Shia against Sunni. Previously there wasn't sectarianism like that in Iraq. You would find Shia married to Sunni. The families were all mixed. People mixed in their workplaces. People didn't hate their neighbour because we were a different branch of Islam. But it suited us to stoke up those sectarian tensions then, and that's the whirlwind that we are reaping now. We disbanded, we dismantled, we destroyed the Iraqi army and the police force because we suspected they might turn against us. And it's these very people who are now involved in IS. And it's these very people who we would actually have needed to deal with the threat of IS. Because the best solution to IS in Syria and Iraq is for the Iraqi and Syrian people to fight up and rise up against them and to prevent them taking over their towns and slaughtering their people. But we have made sure in Iraq that there are no such people. As somebody who's anti-war, I'm not a big fan of the army, but perhaps if the Iraqi army existed, they'd have been able to deal with IS in a way that we, quite frankly, have not been able to do. We appear to be in a state of perpetual war. I know some people have bored some people with this particular line before, but I have 8 nieces and nephews, 7 of whom have never lived in a country that is at peace, and 1 of whom only lives in a country that is at peace for a very few months, just 13 now. Just born in May 2001, by October 2001 we were at war in Afghanistan, and we've been at war ever since. And those children have never lived, never grown up in a country that is not at war, never grown up in a country that isn't killing other children in other countries. And we are now looking as if we are in a state of perpetual war, paid for by perpetual austerity. The financial measures announced by the Tories are not an accident, and it's not about reducing the deficit, because the deficit's through the roof, it's even higher than it was before. It's about paying for war. The same way when we went to war in Afghanistan in 2003, Gordon Brown had billions in what was known as a war chest. Billions. It wasn't a war chest for going to war. It was meant to be to go to public services in order to make sure we all voted Labour again next time round. What did they do with that money? Did they spend it on public services? No, they didn't. They spent it on the war in Iraq. And the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are costing us an estimated £6 billion per year. And you add that to the cost of replacing Trident, and suddenly we see why the disabled are being targeted, why there are cuts to welfare. It's because they want to be in a permanent state of war, and they have to pay for it somehow. Why is there not an outline in this country? It's because it's war at arm's length. We've been at war for 13 years, but we wouldn't really know it, because nothing much actually happens here. You think back to World War I and World War II, people were desperate for the wars to end. Desperate. Why? Because there was an impact here. But we have war at arm's length now, so you can push a button and a drone can fly over your house and it can blow you and your family to pieces. And nobody's any the wiser. And certainly not the team. And this war at arm's length is very, very dangerous. Very dangerous, because it allows a populace to continue with their own lives while other people suffer and die. And maybe if we knew a bit more about what was happening, maybe if it was having a more direct impact on us, maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't be getting away with quite so much. I started off talking about the Sykes-Picot Agreement. We've learned absolutely nothing from history. We have learned nothing from our misadventures in Afghanistan in the 1800s. We were back in and had some more. We've learned nothing from the Versailles Treaty. Let's look at the Versailles Treaty. Let's look at how that led to the rise of Hitler and the rise of the Nazis. And yet, we still pursue the same policies. We pursued the same policy after the Gulf War when we had the sanctions in Iraq. That was our version of Versailles. We beat Saddam, we beat Iraq, so we were going to punish them for losing. Let's also look at how over the years, so-called terrorists have magically become freedom fighters, or magically become our friends. Now in the case of people like Nelson Mandela, that was right. Of course, he was never a terrorist. But then, for example, you look back at the creation of Israel, and how they actually perpetrated what would be terrorist acts against the British occupiers then. And we regarded them as terrorists then, and now they're our best pals, and we support them to kill Palestinians. When Saddam Hussein was fighting against Iran, he was our friend. As soon as that stopped, he was our enemy. We are constantly behaving like this. And where this becomes a problem here is that the people who do have the capacity to stop IS, for example Iran, Hezbollah, we won't have anything to do with them. They are still anathema. And it's not to say that the anti-war movement believes everything Iran does, of course we don't. Or necessarily everything Hezbollah does, of course we don't. But these people might have the capacity to stop IS. But we're keeping them out because it doesn't suit us. And this is something that has gone on perpetually over the years, and we have learned absolutely nothing from it. We learned nothing from CIA and MI6 interference in Syria in 1957, for example. Yet, French Foreign Minister was able to tell us last year that war against Syria was being talked about 2 years prior to the Arab Spring. That Britain and America were putting rebels into Syria to stoke up trouble, to bring down the Assad regime 2 years prior to the Arab Spring. And how's that worked out for them, do you think? Not so well. And how's their NATO working out for them, do you think? Their big alliance that Turkey's a member of, even though Turkey is miles away from the North Atlantic. The North Atlantic Treaty Organisation, what is Turkey doing in it? And Turkey, one of their great allies in NATO, tanks lined up on the border won't help the people of Kobani. Won't help the people of Kobani. Not necessarily advocating Turkey going in. There's problems about Turkey going in this incredibly complex situation. The idea of the Turks going into an Arab state won't go down well. However, people are dying in Kobani. And their NATO allies, America and Britain, who so much faith in, are sitting on the border watching. The North Atlantic Treaty Organisation has from the beginning been a corrupt tool for American foreign policy and remains so. And even where America wants to rely on it, it is of no use to them. So absolutely what Keir's saying about pushing people on the left and the SNP to take the SNP leadership to pass about its policy to continue in NATO absolutely has to be addressed. What we have to remember is one of the reasons Turkey is not going in to help people in Kobani is because people in Kobani are mostly Kurdish. And the Turks want the Kurds wiped off the face of the earth. The Kurdish people to go back in again to 6 people were the people, only one group of people left out in the cold. The one people not to be given their own state by the imperial powers, as if it was theirs to give in the first place. Left to languish in corners of Syria, languish in corners of Iraq. And who is it? Who is it that's standing up against IS? The Kurds. The PKK, who America and Turkey and everyone else will tell you are terrorists, are the people left to stand up against the Kurds. And that's why Turkey isn't helping, that's why they're not going in, that's why they're refusing to play their role as a NATO ally. Quite right, tells me right to be in the receiving end of that actually. They're telling other people. And I just briefly want to touch on Cameron. Well, I will hunt them down, Cameron. I'll hunt them down. I'll hunt down IS. Great, I'll pay his fare. I will pay his fare. I would not only pay his fare, but I pay his money to watch Cameron trying to hunt down IS. That is absolutely. He thinks it's his Winston Churchill moment. He was described recently as a laureate PR man. A laureate PR man. And can I recommend to you Keith Williams' poem on Cameron and IS, which you'll find on the Stop the War website. And if I can find it here, I will read you the last verse. Keith Williams' poem is understandably scathing about Cameron's intervention. The final verse of his poem goes like this. The only way... Oh no, it's not. That's give me a second. Yeah. The only way to defeat IS is to stand firm, said Cameron, pompously adding, a country like ours will not be cowed, only to be cowed by the US empire into helping cover yet more of the Middle East with the US war machine's shroud. I would read that. What I know is we are not the solution. This session is entitled Their Crisis, Our Solution. When I say we, I'm talking about us in the West. We are not the solution. If we were the solution, then the facts quoted by Robert Fisk recently would not be the case. 2,000 people died in Gaza recently. 200,000 they reckon in Syria. In Iraq, anywhere between 500,000 and 1 million. And whose fault is that? The West. We are not the solution. The other reason we are not the solution is we never get the outcome we think we're going to get. They go blundering in. We're going to save everybody. We're going to bomb a few pickup trucks. That'll show them. And it never works out the way they think it's going to. War begets war, death begets death. And whatever the solution, and it's a human response to want to help, whatever the solution, it's not bombing other innocent people. And whatever the solution is, the West cannot be part of it, because the West have created IS. They've created IS through failed foreign policy for 100 years. They will continue to do so because they don't know how to do anything else. So wherever the solution lies to what's happening in the Middle East, it It does not lie in Washington, and it does not lie in Downing Street. Thank you. I think in terms of isolationism, I think the concept of isolationism applies if you've not been the culprit in the first place. I think, often, I'm not arguing that we sit back if there's people genuinely needing assistance, and I think there's other things we can do. But I think if we're the culprit in the first place, if somebody comes and burgles my house, I don't want that person to come around and tidy up. So I don't think isolationism is exactly what would exactly apply in this situation. We have caused the chaos in the Middle East. We have caused sectarianism in Iraq, which has allowed IS to grow, and I don't think it's up to us. I think unfortunately other people are going to have to help clear up our mess, and I don't think it should be us, but I think we'll make it worse. So I don't think it's isolationist. In terms of what I think we should do, I think we should be flooding the area with humanitarian aid. I think we should be sending aid to the refugees in Iraq and Syria. There's a refugee crisis in Lebanon. A third of Lebanon's population is now refugees from IS. And Lebanon can't cope with that. They can't. There's plenty we could be doing to be helping them. It would mean that we weren't isolationists. Doesn't mean that we then kill more Iraqis or more Syrians. I think I saw somebody that was described as a coalition of the unwilling, as opposed to the coalition of the willing. Some people are trying to drag all sorts of people in this conflict who don't necessarily seem to want to be in it. But people who perhaps do hold the solution, the forces of Iran and so on, who possibly could help. I mean, there's not time here to go into all the religious aspects of this, but IS is a form of extreme Wahhabism, which is an odd thing to say because Wahhabism is already pretty extreme. But they hate the Shia. They are extreme Sunnis, hate the Shia, but 120 Sunni scholars have rejected IS, have come together and have issued a verdict that they're not actually Islamic. So what's happening around the world is Muslim people are rejecting them as being Muslims themselves. They're saying you're not an Islamic state. And what I would actually, I think, I don't really like to advocate war. I don't like to advocate fighting. However, I think possibly the best solution to this is if the Muslim forces in the Middle East could join forces against them and push them out themselves and deal with them themselves. I think that would be much more effective. I think if you were seeing Sunni and Shia states working together to get rid of them, I think that would be a much better solution than us winning. Because by the way, we're not going to succeed. We're not going to succeed, and actually the UK involvement is nothing more than posturing. We've got a couple of tornadoes going over. They're certainly not going to put boots in the ground because the last thing they want is IS sitting there with a bunch of British military hostages. So actually what the UK is doing, I think, is window dressing, actually. I don't think we're going to succeed. I don't think we're going to make any impact. I think it would be much more of an impact if the forces in the region could actually drive them out themselves. And I think in the meantime what we should be doing is providing all humanitarian aid we possibly can for the refugees over there. In terms of the debate about the referendum and everything, I've been pro-independence all my life, since I was a wee girl, and I had an uncle in particular who used to talk to me about the situation of Scotland within the British state, and I've always been in favour of independence. And a number of years ago, when some of my friends in the room were not in favour of independence, I used to argue that one of the reasons we should have it was because they do not want to see the final breakup of the British state. And I think that brings together those two strands for me, the independence strand and the anti-war strand, because if maybe we break up the British state, maybe they won't be involved in so many misadventures that take the lives of so many innocent people around the world.